welcome to NOVO Fire Talk. This is our second episode. Ryan, I want to thank you so much for your time. Tell us exactly what your role is in the fire restoration process.
Okay, so I'm the president of TrueView Commercial. We're a public adjusting firm based in Dallas, Texas. Basically, our whole role in the fire claims process, insurance process in general, is to represent the insured towards their insurance company. Basically, we are the adjusters that work specifically for the insured. So most people don't know what a public adjuster even is. They don't realize it's an option that they have when they have a large loss. So just to kind of give you a little background of what a public adjuster is. The state licenses adjusters to act on behalf of insureds to put their best interest first. So just like the insurance company has adjusters that work for them, the state sees that and they want to sort of level the playing field, so to speak. So they license adjusters that have a fiduciary duty to work for the insureds to make sure that the claim is settled in a manner that's accurate and favorable to the insured.
Okay, so from what I understand of it so far, the insurance adjuster from the homeowner's policy, the homeowner's carrier adjuster is out there to represent the carrier, and you are out there as an adjuster to represent the homeowner. That's right. The main difference.
That's right.
And let me ask, how did public adjusting get started? Because I'm sure that it wasn't, started as soon as homeowners insurance came out, right?
No, that's a great question. So there used to be something called common law adjusting, where you didn't even need a license for it. You could just, be, let's say, a construction expert or ex-insurance adjuster. It was just called common law adjusting. Anybody could do it. So whenever you have a situation where there's a lot of money involved, oftentimes the state wants to try to regulate that to make sure that the consumer, that their interests are looked out for. So I'm not exactly sure when PAs became licensed in this state. Each state is different. So okay. In Texas, I believe it was the early 2000s. They started licensing public adjusters then. So again, each state's different. And in some states, you don't need a license even to be an adjuster at all for the carrier side. It's just, they don't require one. So
interesting. So public adjusters kind of became common in the early 2000s. When did you get involved with it, and how did that happen?
Sure. So my insurance past is kind of broad. So I first started in the insurance industry doing health, life, and variable annuities.
Okay.
So I had met a guy who owned a financial advising company when I was 18 or 19, and was just kind of fascinated with the insurance world and the different permutations you could take on as careers. So I was more geared towards the financial side. So I started working for a company then and found out quickly that, okay, I don't really like this side of the insurance business. So I got into the adjusting side. I worked for Nationwide Insurance as an adjuster there. And after that, worked as a public adjuster. Worked for a public adjuster for an extended period of time. This would have been back in 2009 when I first became licensed as a PA. From there, learned all aspects of claim documentation and how to appropriately estimate and sort of document a claim so that you could really maximize the settlement. So I stopped being a PA for a period of time and switched towards engineering. So I'm not an engineer. But I worked with the guys, two other guys, where we started a forensic engineering firm. Worked there for a little while to really get an understanding of what it is that the insurance companies are looking for in terms of documentation to support estimates, to support claims. So we were doing forensic evaluations and reportings for carriers, for insureds, for commercial property owners.
You guys were looking at the hard evidence.
Absolutely. So
okay.
Material science, basically. Hey, what's damage from a loss? How did it get damaged? What constitutes damage? Once I did that, I left that firm and then started TrueView Commercial. So like I said, I had kind of a broad path. So I was on the financial side, the property casualty side on insurance, then went to the engineering material damage side, and then once I had those facets of the industry, I said, okay, now I have the tools that I need to start this firm and offer public adjusting service on a very deep level. So that's kind of how I got started.
Cool. And you've bounced around in the insurance industry doing different roles. What has kept you in insurance?
Well, insurance it's a strange business. So like I said,
Certainly
this
is.
public adjusting is a niche. Most people don't even know it exists. So oftentimes we go to somebody and if we're doing like direct outreach, so to speak, in the house fire world, most people have never heard of a public adjuster because they've never had a big enough insurance loss where it makes sense to have a PA on board. So I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to really like, I think, numbers. You have to like puzzles. You have to like solving big problems. But more importantly, and I don't mean to sound trite, but you have to like taking care of people, because this job, it's a service industry where we're oftentimes dealing with, on the insured side, the residential side, you're dealing with people who have catastrophes. It's oftentimes the worst moment of their lives, the biggest claims they've ever had, that often feel, like their lives are ruined. So you have to kind of go there as a servant and say, okay, how can we help these people? So I think that is what I would lead with, is to say you have to have a willingness and a desire to want to help people first, and then everything else just kind of falls into place as far as the puzzle aspect and figuring out how to put a claim together.
Sure. And so I'm actually in the field. NOVO, we do residential fire restoration, and a lot of the times I'm actually on scene at a live fire talking with a homeowner whose home may still be on fire. And a lot of the, it's really depending on which characters I'm talking to, but a lot of the times I find that people are so overwhelmed that they're unwilling to listen or even try to understand who a public adjuster is and why they need them.
Right.
What advice would you give to people in the field when it comes to explaining a public adjuster, or rather expressing why the homeowner needs that help?
Sure. So it's kind of a different presentation depending on who you're talking to. So if it's a residential loss, it's a very emotional situation. And anytime, in my opinion, when you have a situation that's really emotional, the biggest thing you could do is nothing. Is don't take action right away, because often you're under duress. You're being, I've done the field sales, going out and doing that kind of outreach directly with people who've had fires. That's kind of how I started as a PA.
Okay.
Drumming up business that way. So the fire chase, so to speak, that you're describing, I've been there, I've done that, I know exactly what that's like. It's very emotional. So the biggest thing that I could stress for a homeowner is gather information. That's it. Don't take any action. Gather information, get to a place where you're safe, and get your family, get your medication, whatever the emergency items are that you need if you're dealing with a house fire, for example. Get safe, gather information, and then when you're not being hounded by 20 or 30 different companies vying for your business, then you can really do your research and find the service provider that's right for you, that's going to be a good fit. Whether that involves a PA or not, I say don't do anything, just gather information.
Right. Cool. And Ryan, how important would you say it is to get with a public adjuster before your contents start moving out of the house? How important is that, and why is it important?
Okay, specific to contents, you want to just talk about the content side. So sometimes there will be a scenario where service providers, whether it's a mitigation company, contractor, or the insurance carrier, will come out and they'll want to salvage a lot of contents. There are scenarios where salvaging contents makes sense. There are, I think, a little more, with respect to house fires, there's more scenarios where it doesn't make sense to move the contents out. So bringing a PA in, first we go, okay, let's stop. Again, we don't want to just start making decisions just to make a decision to feel like the claim's moving forward, or to feel like taking action must be the right step, so let's just do something. We pump the brakes a little bit. So again, it's kind of a, hey, wait, let's gather information. Once we have information, we can start to make decisions that are in your best interest. So contents, when there's a fire, the damage has already happened. Your contents are already damaged. So whether you take a day or 2 days or 3 days to go, let me kind of get my bearings here, bring somebody in like a PA to properly evaluate this, it doesn't make a difference. That day or so sitting in smoke and soot after you've had a severe fire, it's not going to cause more damage.
Right.
So I think the biggest value is, again, let's gather some data, let's hire a vendor, there's been some scenarios I know on projects that you guys have been on where it's like, hey, you guys do a lot of contents work, so come through, take a look at it and make a recommendation. What do you think could be salvaged? What shouldn't be cleaned? And we're kind of using IICRC standards for a fire and smoke restoration.
And what is IIRIC?
So IICRC is basically, it's an institute that sets up, it's kind of the gold standard of cleaning processes. Given, whether you have smoke, water, mold, these types of mitigation, they sort of set the training protocol and the standards for the industry as to what's deemed most appropriate given a particular damage profile.
Okay. And do you feel that that's pretty accurate most of the time?
I feel like it is most of the time. There is obviously some nuances to it depending on what you're dealing with. Different material types damage in different ways based on soot deposition, what kind of soot you're talking about. So, but I think overall IICRC is good, and if you can get certified in that, it's definitely helpful. We've got adjusters on our staff as PAs that are IICRC certified. So I think it makes sense. Again, the more education, the more data you have, the more astute decisions you can make to help a homeowner.
Awesome. Awesome. And Ryan, on average, just a ballpark number, how much do you guys typically increase someone's claim?
That's a great question. So we get asked this all the time. So as a PA, how do I know that you're going to get me more money, right? That's always a question. Or how much do you guys add? Sometimes in the streets, there'll be contractors there that go, oh, they don't know how much more they can add. Oh, they're just going to take your money. They don't know. It's all sorts of weird things to try to keep a PA out. These are questions we got all the time. And I didn't want to tell homeowners, well, I'm confident that our firm can get you so much more money. Because to me, it's like too much sales, right? So It's like, okay, don't salesman me. I want to understand, how can you get me more money? If I'm the insured, how can you do this for me? How does it work? So on average, again, we have different claim types that we handle. So we don't want to group everything into just a big ball of claims increases.
Well, for this question specifically, let's talk about residential fire.
Okay, residential fire. So we did a case study. So that's how we get our data. So we examined all the claims that we had and we said, okay, of our claims, how many claims did the insured start the process with the insurance company first? It brought us in after the fact. We took all of those claims together and said, okay, here are the clients that got the insurance company's settlement first and thought, hey, this isn't right. Either they had somebody like NOVO come in and go, hey, this doesn't seem right, there's not enough money here for a project, or they just felt it themselves, something seems off. So we took that settlement, that creates basically a baseline settlement. From those big groups of claims where we said, okay, residential fires baseline, how many of these claims do we have, and then what was our percent of increase? So meaning we finally settled the claim. So what was the difference between the baseline settlement and then where TrueView was able to take the claim? So on average in this particular case study that we did, it was 118% increase.
Wow.
After the insurance company had already started the claim.
And is that on structure, contents, or is that overall?
So that's overall.
Overall, wow. 118% is a big number.
I know, it's kind of wild. So and we get these questions. Well, what's the data look like? We have some scenarios that we excluded from our data set because they were extreme values and outliers in the data set. So for example, let me just say this. If an insurance company comes out and they offer $1,500, I'm just going to make this scenario. They offer $1,500 and we end up settling it for $50,000. That percent of increase would be so massive that you wouldn't want to include that in a data set where you take it from, let's say, 100 grand to 218. So those we took out so that it didn't look like, oh my gosh, you guys cherry picked only the best claims where you did this. If that were the case, then I would say, oh, it's thousands of percent increase, but no, it's about 118%.
Could you give me a specific example of a case where you guys maybe increased more than 118 or?
Sure, yeah, that happens. It happens frequently. So in fact, I will tell you a real scenario that happened yesterday. We had a insured in our office. They, I won't reveal their name, but it was a doctor out of South Lake area, Trophy Club. So they had a water loss. This isn't a fire, but they had a severe water loss. And this was a year ago. The carrier came out and offered them about $24,000. And they're standing there going, I don't know, this doesn't seem right. So they found us online. They researched Public Adjuster in the Dallas area, found our website, and they reached out to us online. I didn't know them from anybody. They just contacted us online. Fast forward about 11 months later, which is yesterday, and we had a settlement value that was 546% increase.
Wow.
So we took it from it was about 24,000 to 200 and I don't remember exactly where it was, 230 something.
Oh my gosh, and help the viewers kind of visualize, what did the loss look like? How were they able to even give them a $24,000?
Well, this was precisely the question of the homeowner. So the insured was there going, hey, I knew this was bad, but how did you do this? What happened? Why was our claim this far off? I explained to them, I don't ever want to say that an insurance carrier adjuster is just out there to try to screw you. That's not what we say. It's more or less, having done the insurance carrier's side before, it's like, okay, you have to look at what the adjuster's doing. They've got a claim load. They're getting claims every week, whether they settle your claim or not. So they're very busy schedule. They're overworked. They have too many claims they're handling. Then when claims start to become problematic, they back up. So let's just say workload in general, they're too overworked to be able to go, hey, let me walk into your house, take time and look at everything and make sure that I'm trying to find every bit of damage that there is. So first issue, they just don't have enough time. Second issue is perhaps more so a training issue where they just aren't trained to accurately identify damage. So not enough time, they don't have the correct training. And the third thing is they lack the construction experience to understand how homes are built in the first place. So you might look at a loss and go, well, I think this should be fixed. Well, what all items need to be fixed? I'm not really sure. I can only tell you there's drywall here and there's some baseboard, but I don't know how this all goes together, so I don't know what's behind it, et cetera. So those are compounding issues that create a settlement that's just significantly low. So this house, when you looked at it, it was a water damaged house throughout the first floor, really nice home, beautiful wood floors, custom cabinetry, you name it. You start missing items on water damage like that, and you have a lot of operations that, you know, I say kind of give you a domino effect. So if you miss one thing, then you're going to miss 10 other items that are included operations. So this one just had a lot of those. It was just a lot of operations that you miss one and it just kind of snowballs.
Things that you can't see from, you know, just walking through the house.
Well, precisely. Also, this comes down to being able to assess a loss. So insurance adjusters, a lot of people don't realize this, that most insurance companies prohibit adjusters from doing moisture readings. They won't let them go through with a moisture meter and actually go, hey, here's the moisture on this wall. They won't let them do FLIR imaging. They won't let them do destructive testing. They're prohibited from that. And it's a liability issue. The insurance company doesn't want them to be on the hook for either, for one, doing destructive testing, but two, maybe creating a protocol that's not correct, and then let's say it leads to mold or somebody gets really sick because all of the fire toxins weren't removed from the home. So there's just liability there, so carriers don't do it, but we do, or we hire people who can do it that are certified so that we can document it. So that was one of the things on that loss. We had done a FLIR survey, moisture survey of the house, and we were able to find damage that the insurance company, you know, wasn't allowed, so to speak, to look for.
Cool. And Ryan, between the different adjusters, how would you vet a public adjuster?
This is a great question. So how we vet them, at least for me at our firm, when we're interviewing people, we have a process where we bring them on, and this is something that I like to do, where I take an Xactimate estimate. Of course, Xactimate is the software that the industry uses as standard to estimate scopes for reconstruction. I take an Xactimate estimate, and I'll have a couple of different loss types. And I will take a section out of that Xactimate estimate during the interview, no prep, and I hand them an estimate. And it's like halfway through. And I'll have them read it, and I'll say, read this estimate, tell me what's happening, and tell me what kind of loss you think it is. What caused this damage? That tells me whether or not this adjuster understands, one, how to read an Xactimate estimate, can do it on the fly, and can also then correlate this restoration scope to what must have caused it and what the damage profile was like. So that's what I do, and then if they pass that, we still don't hire them. Because again, I want to make sure that they know exactly what they're doing. So we go ahead and have them write an estimate for us. We'll bring them on a loss, and we'll say, this is kind of like a job interview. Write an estimate. I want to see you in action. They do that. And obviously then heavy background checks. So that's more on the technical side, but obviously we do background checks at our firm to make sure that this person is, who they say they are, and that we don't have any surprises. They've got to be licensed by the state, have a PA license. They've got to be bonded, everything that the state requires.
So that's very, very in-depth on how you would vet a PA. Now, what about for a homeowner that's trying to find somebody that obviously they can trust, who's going to represent them well? What tips would you give to them for vetting a PA?
Sure. So there are industry credentials that we like to look for. Industry credentials could be something like, first and foremost, check TDI, the Texas Department of Insurance, or whatever state you're in, check their Department of Insurance and make sure, one, that they have a valid PA license, because there are scenarios where people are holding themselves out to be a public adjuster and they are not licensed, or maybe their license expired, and so that does happen. So one, check with TDI, make sure your PA is licensed. Two, check Google. Google reviews are real reviews. You may have some wackos out there that leave reviews,
Right.
but check Google, check Better Business Bureau, check Yelp. These are all, pretty much seen as industry standard, reputable sources to go to for reviews. So that's that piece. And then also, just do a quick Google search, find out who they work for, if they're in lawsuits for anything, what kind of lawsuits, why. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, and to continue that, what would be 3 questions for a homeowner to ask a PA once they've vetted them online and they're actually calling in?
Sure. So I think one of the best questions that homeowners, I will say that homeowners often ask about rate. Hey, how much are you going to charge? This is a good question, because sometimes PAs, what you don't want is a PA that's trying to undercut all the other PAs on pricing to try to win the job. So if your PA tries to charge you too little, I know this seems strange, but if they charge you too little, you should be very cautious. The reason is, so one, how much are your rates, right? Let's make sure they're industry standard. And if they're not, why aren't they industry standard?
And what is that industry standard?
In Texas, it's 10%. So it's different from each state. Some states cap it at 15, some at 20, and then some states, they don't have a cap. You can charge whatever you want, which I think could be kind of crazy. But so ask the rate, right? Let's find out what your rate is and why. If it's too little, this is why it's a question of concern. PAs get charged, or we charge a percentage of the total claim. So if your fee is too small, and I've heard of PAs out there that do this, they basically lower their rate really low. They take the first draw from the insurance company, they charge that low rate, they just take their fee. Then there's really no incentive on the back end for that PA to follow through to get the job done, because there's not enough money.
Yeah, and that was something that has really blown my mind since I came into this industry, is how little regulation there actually is along, not just involving PAs, but also restoration companies. It seems that it's very based on your word. Like, you trust me and we're going to continue talking, but we don't have a contract in place.
Right. Well, to your point, so PAs in this claim process, PAs must be licensed. So we're actually pretty highly regulated. So we have to be licensed, we have to be bonded. If somebody doesn't like what we do, there is a governing body that they can complain to. They can go to TDI. TDI will investigate PAs. Our firm works with TDI. We report insurance carrier adjusters for bad faith claims. We kind of help them to keep the industry somewhat clean. But yes, with respect to restoration companies, there is no regulation at all in Texas. It's pretty wide. It's like truly the Wild West.
Yeah.
You can start a restoration company tomorrow and move on, and it's in any industry that you can make a lot of money in has unsavory people that just pop up. But yeah, I do think that it would be better if we had more regulation here in Texas.
Cool. When you're dealing with, well, how different does it make your job dealing with a direct homeowner that lives in the property versus a property management company, a corporation that just owns a bunch of rentals?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's different customers that hire us. Residential, it's more difficult because it's way more emotional. You're helping people, you're trying to get them to see, sometimes they want to salvage stuff that we say, hey, you shouldn't salvage this, let's get it paid for. But it has sentimental value and they may choose to salvage it anyway. It's their choice. But it's way more emotional. On the commercial side, let's say multifamily side where you've got apartment complex or you have a single family home that is a rental home owned by somebody, I tend to like those more because it's more cut and dry. The owners are going, hey, this is a thing that makes me money.
Right.
There's no emotion. They're just going, hey, I understand what a PA does. I want you to represent me. I want you to maximize my settlement. Let me know when it's done. And they are very hands off. So yeah, I think it's a little easier to handle those types of claims.
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. So you mentioned about the homeowner deciding on whether or not they're going to keep something. And I have actually experienced a few different homeowners where a mitigation company comes in and tells them, hey, we can't save any of this, or we're going to save all of this. None of it is salvageable. Can you speak a little bit on the homeowner's power in choosing whether or not certain items are restored versus replaced?
Sure. So the insurance company reserves the right under the insuring agreement with the policy they have. They reserve the right to either repair or replace something, and it's at the option of the insurance company. So most people don't realize that. They'll say, hey, well, I either want to go this way or I don't want to go that way. Really, the insurance company has the right to say, hey, if this item is damaged, we want to try to clean it first, or we want to try to repair it first. If that fails, then we owe you to replace it. Now that becomes an issue when you're talking about limited coverage. So there are scenarios where, let's say somebody only has $100,000 worth of contents coverage, that if you start cleaning a bunch of items, then it eats into the coverage. So if the cleaning we know has a very high probability of failing, meaning that it just doesn't come clean, or salvage attempts are just not recommended, it's going to eat up the coverage. We know it's a foregone conclusion. It's going to not be clean. Then the insured goes, well, let me replace it. Well, now you have half the money to replace your stuff because you spent it all on cleaning. Insurance companies understand that, and a lot of times if you talk to them about that, at least the homeowner can say, hey, wait, let me get a PA, or let me get a NOVO or somebody to come in here, right? Let me have somebody else look at this and give me advice on whether or not I should try to clean it or salvage it or just total it all. So it's a balancing act of one, let's not try to be too emotional about it because you may want to save everything. And then two, what are your policy limits? Because we don't want to get into a situation where we're eating up coverage on cleaning things that we know would just be totaled anyway.
Right. Man, I just had something that I was looking at and I was going to bring it up and I lost my place here. That's what it was. So I have personally seen a lot of insurance companies where they're delaying payments or causing big fuss about, hey, we don't agree that this is worth this. What value does a PA provide in communicating between the insurance company on behalf of the homeowner as far as contents go and the
Sure.
settlement?
So, no, I'm following what you're asking. So, as a representative of the insured, we are able to call the insurance carrier on behalf of the insured and say, hey, listen, here's the issue. Contents were, let's say, in a scenario where it's undervalued, the insurance company has brought out a third-party vendor that got maybe some of the contents on a list, maybe not all of them. Some of them they're saying can be salvaged, some of them can't, but ultimately, let's say they non-salvage a bunch of items, put it on a list, and then they have their people price it. We can look at that, bring that to the homeowner, insured, and say, hey, are these numbers accurate? Nobody knows really what you had better than you do. So I don't know how old these items are. I don't know where you bought this particular thing from, especially if it's charred, right? And you're just dealing with rubble. So we are able to then negotiate with the insurance company on behalf of the owner. Whereas, let's say a contractor might say, hey, we want to have this stuff non-salvage it, let's total it. Let us talk to your insurance company about it. The insurance company is going to give kickback to a contractor and say, hey, we're not going to negotiate with you. We're not required to talk to you. We're going to clean it all or whatever. So the insurance company gives contractors way more pushback, I feel like, than they give public adjusters that have a good reputation. You know, our firm has a very, very good reputation in North Texas dealing with carriers. So I feel like we have a lot more latitude of talking in a way to the insurance company, proving with science and other data points that we can say, hey, this is not correct. Insured is going to reject this, and we also reject it, and we're going to need you guys to reconsider this. We present something that's reasonable and fact-based, and the carrier will oftentimes agree because they know they owe it. It's just a matter of how we present it.
Cool. Well, Ryan, you've shared with us a ton about your job in the industry and what role you play in the loss situation. Do you have any other final thoughts or any other things you'd want to share with a homeowner?
Well, the biggest thing for me as a public adjuster when dealing with specifically homeowners is just take your time. We don't come out, we're not a high pressure company. Any company that comes out and really pressures you as a homeowner, you should be asking why. Why is this person so forceful, or why are they trying to get me to do this? So if you can stop for a second as a homeowner, think, breathe, gather data, I think that's one of the most important things. And then bring a public adjuster on the claim as early as you can. If you can do it at the beginning of a claim, you're going to get the most value. You're going to have a turnkey operation. We're going to cut the settlement time significantly. Your stress level is going to be greatly reduced because you're not having to deal with the insurance company, contractor meetings, all of that stuff. And then, of course, we know with our data that we're always going to increase the claim. I've never had a claim ever in my career where the insurance company has paid less than what they already offered, or that our fee isn't greatly outweighed by the amount of money that we're able to get somebody. So that's on that side. And another one is find a good contractor. Find a contractor that is willing to work with a PA. I think that speaks volumes. When you find a contractor as an insured, that the contractor says, hey, you know what, I welcome you bringing somebody into this process that's regulated and is looking out for you. They're required to look out for you. I think that is a wonderful almost partnership between the insured, the contractor, and the PA, where it's like, okay, let's work together. And then when you have that kind of environment, it's easier with the insurance company as well, because we're more or less bringing, as the PA, we're bringing everyone together. Let's be reasonable, and let's, hey, carrier, we know what we're owed. We're going to ask for it in a reasonable way. Hey, contractor, we're going to get a great settlement. We're going to have a project that's fully funded and ready for you all to do what you do best and take care of the insured. and the insured can just kind of sit back and sort of coach us a little bit on their desires. Again, it's their claim. We can only make recommendations. But yeah, I think finding a contractor that understands that process and helps facilitate that means the world to the process, and just making sure it all gets done in the insured's best interest, really.
Awesome. And yeah, at the end of the day, that's what we all exist for, right? Is to get the insured's best interest, bring their property back to what it was before it burnt or got water or whatever
yeah, a lot of
happens.
contractors say that, but that's not what they want to do. But no, we've worked projects with NOVO before. I'll kind of just toot your guys' horn a little bit. We had one project that NOVO did for a client of ours. We had settled the claim, and then I think somehow, I'm not sure how it came about, that you guys got on this project. And this was one where the carrier kind of fought it. We ended up getting very, very good settlement. But ultimately, I think it made more sense for the house to just be totally demoed. When you kind of look at where the damage was and the settlement that was achieved on our side. And this was the first project that I'd really seen you guys on, and you came through and completely rebuilt this house in a time frame that I could not believe. It was unbelievable, very fast. You had communicated with our adjuster at our firm who handled the claim. The communication was there. Like I say, the timeline was unbelievable, and then the house looked incredible when it was done. The finish out was perfect. I mean, everything was brand new. Attention to detail was there. It was awesome. So I do think that you guys are one of those companies out there, and I know that we've had clients that have said, hey, we've talked to NOVO, and NOVO actually turned us down because they're at capacity. And I think that speaks volumes to you guys, where you're not just trying to do volume, you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to get the right projects that fit your wheelhouse, and you're not going to just bring somebody on and then have a project that's delayed and the customer doesn't get the service that they're expecting. So I have found that, and we've talked about that at our firm. We deal with contractors all over the place, from LA to New York to Ohio, Oklahoma, here in Texas. You're one of the very few companies that will say, hey, you know what, we're at capacity. That's happened a couple of times, and that's good, because obviously if you guys are at capacity, that means people want to deal with you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you noting that and making light of that, because we do find it very, very important that the customers we do have an intimate relationship with us, and that we are extremely transparent throughout the whole process. And the fact of the matter is, especially in fire restoration, you can't be fully transparent with 30 people at a time. There's a lot of stuff happening. You have the adjusters working, contractors working, inspections, city, right, all that stuff. So yeah, again, I really appreciate you making light of that, because it is something that we value a lot at NOVO.
Yeah, like I say, that was something that when I saw with you guys was like, okay, at first when, that project where you guys did that full, it was basically a ground up rebuild, that was surprising, because being in this industry and you see what is the standard doesn't mean good, right? Standard right, just means right, this is how most of the time it goes. That does not make it good. So the industry standard is not great. And when you guys did that, I was like, man, I was really astonished. I mean, we talked about it at our company, like, this is crazy. This was so fast. The communication was there. It was great. That really made us go, okay, who are these guys? What are they doing over there? And then the fact again, hey, we're at capacity. We want to make sure the projects we bring on get taken care of, was great, because you see all these contractors that just bring a project on, bring a project on, bring a project on. They'll have 50 projects. Well, that's great, but when none of them are moving, none of them are getting finished, or timelines are being missed,
yeah,
you have a very angry customer, and we see it all the time.
Yeah, and again, we're all here to serve the homeowner in their best interest.
Absolutely.
And it's a little bit shameful to see the other companies that do that, because we all know they're just chasing the numbers on the P&L, but it's very warming, and makes me feel good about the company I work for, knowing that outside opinions have that same perspective that we have ourselves.
Yeah, we all want to make money. We don't do this for free, but it's it's doing the right thing with the project when it's in front of you. You know, there are some cases where even at our company, you just never know what you're going to run into, where homeowners may ask for things that are unconventional, and you want to make sure they're happy. So you kind of, I'm sure you guys do this, where you kind of give in and go, okay, hey, we'll give you this upgrade, or we'll do something where it absolutely cuts into your bottom line, but you want to make sure the customer's happy. I know we do that sometimes, where a customer will say, well, oh, I don't know, sometimes they'll ask for a reduction in their fees. Sometimes we just flat out, we get to the very end of the claim, last check swap. If it's a few $100s that they owe us, oftentimes it's like, hey, you know what, we'll just discount it, don't worry about it. You know, we want to make sure they're happy. So I know you guys do the same thing.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, I'm glad to hear that we're on the same page. It's been truly awesome working with TrueView Commercial, and it feels good, gives me extra confidence knowing that we have a team like you guys behind us. I appreciate your time coming in. I think that we've provided a lot of value and insight to any homeowners who may be dealing with a fire loss, maybe today, or maybe their home burnt 3 months ago and they still don't know where to go.
Well, it's never too late to bring in a PA. It's best at the beginning, but it's never too late. So if anybody is struggling with one, we're happy to take a look at it. It doesn't cost anything. We'll look at the claim. There's no charge. We review it. Get eyes on the project, kind of see where it's at, and if we can add value, we certainly will. And but there are ones that we do run from. So some claims where it's like, oh boy, this is really too far gone. You know, we can't help you. But yeah, we're just out there to try to help as many people as we can.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for your time, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate the interview.